good afternoon, YouTube. It's Eric. This video is going to be pretty quick. I'm just going to highlight in this video two quick, you can see that these two groups I think will show, the Jesuit influence and how they use dialectics to control people. But this is these two Islamic think tanks that were founded by Jesuit trained individuals. So let me close my window. Give me a second. Sorry about that. Okay, but these two think tanks right here, you have the Council of Islamic Relations, CAIR, which you see here is a Muslim civil rights and advocacy group headquartered in D.C. You see the founder of the Council of Islamic Relations, right here, Omar Ahmad, where you look at his alma mater, IHS, Jesuit Santa Clara. See, Omar Ahmad got his master's in computer science from Jesuit Santa Clara, as well as a master's in political science, 2 master's degrees Omar Ahmad got from Jesuit Santa Clara. He also served on the board of trustees at the Santa Clara City Library. You see, he had been chairman of the Council on American Islamic Relations. I just want to make sure I'm getting the name right. Since its founding in 1994, but stepped down from that position in 2005. And this is, I'll show you a picture of this Omar Ahmad. This is him right here. Oh, make sure I'm not a robot. Jeez. Give me a second. This is the photo of Omar Ahmad here. He was the founder of the Council of Islamic Relations. I was going to find Sherman Skolnick mentioned this in a quote. He said these think tanks, all they do is rile up Jews and Arabs against each other. That's what these Jesuit-controlled think tanks do. Look at this post here. I had another quote about this, but look, so this is exactly what these Jesuit-controlled think tanks are doing on the Muslim-controlled think tanks. It's all about creating dialectics between Muslims and Jews, getting Muslims to hate Jews and Jews to hate Muslims. That's in the Jesuit interest. So here's an article here from Investigative Project 2019, July 10th. This just came out. Council of American Islamic Relations executive brother makes Facebook post about killing Jews. If you look at that. Oh God, reduce their numbers, exterminate them, and don't leave a single one alive. That's what this Jesuit-controlled think tank is promoting. And this is the founder of the think tank here, Omar Ahmad. So here he is with the CAIR in the background. This guy went to Jesuit Santa Clara. And here is the comment Sherman Skolnick made. I'll read this one first, actually. This came from Craig Unger's book. I linked this in the description. This came from page 204 and 208 of Craig Unger's book, House of Bush, House of Saud. You see here, in 1995, this Council of Islamic American Relations group got direct funding from the Saudi government. But in 1995, the Saudi government reported $4 million in donations to construct a mosque complex in Los Angeles named after Ibn Taymiyya, one of the forefathers of Wahhabism. The same year, the website reported a $6 million donation for a mosque in Cincinnati, Ohio. In 1999, the Saudis helped the CAIR, Council of American Islamic Relations, buy land for its Washington D.C. headquarters. This is the anti-Semitism I wanted to mention here. This is when Omar Ahmad was still president of CAIR, and he was on the chairman of the board until 2005. At a 1998 rally sponsored by CAIR and the American Muslim Council, for instance, 500 people sang a song with the lyrics, quote, "No to the Jews, descendants of the apes," end quote. And actually, the Jesuits have full control over this Muslim dialectic, because you'll see the groups like the Council for National Policy, which are openly anti-Islam, like the leader of the Council for National Policy, Frank Gaffney, went to Georgetown. That's what I want to show you here. There's really another interesting connection in this book with the Jesuit-trained Knight of Malta, William Casey, CIA director, who would fly to the Vatican in a windowless C-141 jet. But on page 61 of the Craig Unger's book, House of Bush, House of Saud, he says here, even more secretive was the new understanding that Saudi Arabia would become a U.S. partner in covert operations. not just in the Middle East, but all over the globe. As a monarchy without the constitutional constraints that burden the CIA, the Saudis had enormous flexibility to help the Reagan administration execute covert operations prohibited by Congress. Not long after the AWACS, Airborne Warning and Control System sale, was approved, Prince Bandar of Saudi Arabia thanked the Reagan administration for the vote by honoring a guest by William Casey. William Casey, Jesuit trained at Fordham, Knight of Malta, Opus Dei. And you look at William Casey deposited $10 million in a Vatican bank to be used in a campaign against the Communist Party. So the Prince of Saudi Arabia was donating, $10 million through William Casey that was deposited into the Vatican bank. That's Prince Bandar. Implicated in the Airborne Warning and Control System deal was a pledge by the Saudis to fund anti-communist guerrilla groups in Afghanistan, Angola, and elsewhere that were supported by the Reagan administration. And that's the Mujahideen. That's actually the origins, of Osama bin Laden. He was a CIA agent. But this is an interesting quote here that the Prince Bandar of Saudi Arabia put $10 million into the Vatican Bank through a request by Jesuit-trained Knight of Malta, Opus Dei CIA Director William Casey. So this is the first group here, the Council of American Islamic Relations. And you see here they're very anti-Semitic. And this next group I found that the Jesuits control, a pro-Muslim think tank, is also very anti-Semitic. And the leader of this think tank, like Omar Ahmad being trained by Jesuits at Santa Clara, James Zogby is the founder and president of the Arab American Institute. You see here a Washington, D.C. based organization that serves the political and research arm of the Arab American community. He is also managing director of Zogby Research Services, specializing in research and communications, undertaking polling across the Arab world. This guy's very involved in Middle Eastern politics. And he's also executive from 2001 to 2007. He was an executive member of the Democratic National Committee, interestingly. He's also appointed by President Obama to the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom. Actually, I have that. The Jesuits took down the story, but I have this archived on the video I have of Lou Dobbs interviewing the Jesuit Thomas J. Reese. Here's the article from America Magazine. Jesuit Father Thomas J. Reese joined Catholic James Zogby on the United States Commission for the International Religious Freedom. You see here, Father Thomas Reese, a Jesuit, joins 3 fellow Catholics on the commission: Chairman Robert P. George, bioethicist and Princeton University professor James Zogby, the founder and president of the Arab American Institute, and Mary Ann Glendon, a Harvard University professor and former U.S. ambassador to the Vatican. Interestingly, the pedophile Cardinal Theodore McCarrick was on the religious freedom panel, interestingly. Just like they had a pedophile Cardinal Wuerl on the Presidential Commission of Scholars. You see there's a few archbishops on this United States Commission on International Religious Freedom as well. You had Bishop William Murphy, most Reverend, quote, the Most Reverend Ricardo Ramirez, and Archbishop Charles J. Kappa. If you haven't seen this clip, I recommend you watch it. I'll just show you this here. I just won't spend that. This is a pretty classic clip. Lou Dobbs says to the Thomas Reese that you didn't answer a single question I asked, but you're a Jesuit. You can get away with that. Look at this right here. I'll just play this quick.
Yes, Father, but then again, you're a Jesuit.
Are American citizens.
You didn't answer a single question I asked, Father, but then again, you're a Jesuit. You can get away with that.
You can get away with that.
Father.
Oh, look. You see how his face is smiling from ear to ear? And look how he quickly readjusts it.
Yes.
Yep. I'm on national TV, yep. He's gonna play that one
Who
more
are
time.
American citizens.
You didn't answer a single question I asked, Father, but then again, you're a Jesuit. You can get away with that. Father.
Yes.
And just look at that face is tense up right there. Oh, that's pretty funny. You see, James Zogby was with the Jesuit priest Thomas Reese on this committee. Okay, you see here, James Zogby, he's Lebanese Catholic. He went to Jesuit Lemoyne College in Syracuse. Jesuit Lemoyne College has a program with Lockheed Martin. I think the program is something on the line of the government leadership program. What a joke. That's in my post I did on Lockheed. You see here, James Zogby attended Jesuit Lemoyne College in New York, graduating in 1967. He's also he's worked for Al Gore He worked for Barack Obama. Dude, this guy's been in politics for a long time. But interestingly, I just want to show you here. Jesuit Lemoyne College awarded James Ogby an honorary degree in 1995, and in 1997, Jesuit Lemoyne College named James Ogby the college's most outstanding alumnus. Interesting, the most outstanding alumnus. So there's some background on this guy. James Ogby is the current president and founder of the Arab American Institute, founded in 1985. This is what Sherman Skolnick says here. And he says Tom Ridge, the new American Gestapo chief. Skolnick is referring to the Department of Homeland Security, also more commonly known as Homeland Security. But Tom Ridge was a Knight of Columbus, actually. He was educated at a Catholic school, a Catholic college in Erie, Pennsylvania. Tom Ridge was a Knight of Columbus, head of the Department of Homeland Security, but Skolnick writes here, Tom Ridge, the new American Gestapo chief, head of Homeland Security, is tightly aligned with Charles Zogby and his cousin James Zogby. Both Charles and James Zogby are Catholic, so that's very fitting that Catholic Tom Ridge is close to them. But you see, James Zogby is the president of the Arab American Institute, considered by some a militant pro-Arab lobby. Is this part of a route to manipulate Mideast affairs, enriching and empowering the oil cartel by pitching Arabs against Israelis and vice versa? Some think so. And that's exactly what it is. I'm just going to repeat that last line. But this is what Catholic James Ogby's Arab American Institute and Jesuit-trained Omar Ahmad's Council on American Islamic Relations are doing. Skolnick says, is this part of a route to manipulate Mideast affairs, enriching and empowering the oil cartel by pitching Arabs against Israelis and vice versa? Some think so. I think that's exactly what they're doing. You see here, this was an article that came out recently. This is pretty quick, but this was done by the Jewish News Syndicate. This was done in 2017, I believe. This quick column, it says here by Stephen Flatow is the author. It says another anti-Semite in the Democratic Party. James Ogby has gone so far to implicitly praise Representative Ilhan Omar's statements about the Jews, characterizing her remarks as, quote, the discussion of Omar's courage has helped to open. What a joke. But you see here, April, this is 2019, I apologize. You see here, he has engaged in, quote, crude anti-Semitism, according to the Anti-Defamation League. He has, quote, consistently impugned the loyalty of American Jews. This is Catholic James Ogby, said the American Jewish Congress. And he has compared Israel to the Nazis, which, according to the U.S. State Department, is anti-Semitic. Yet, irony of ironies, the longtime Democratic Party official James Ogby has emerged as one of the most prominent voices in the party, defending Congressman Ilhan Omar and defending her remarks about Jews being disloyal, and that her remarks about Jews being disloyal were anti-Semitic. Okay, Zogby is a longtime leader of various anti-Israeli groups. First, the Palestine Human Rights Campaign and the American Arab Discrimination Committee, and currently the Arab American Institute, which he founded and is president of. At the same time, he was also been prominent in the Democratic Party leadership circles. This is interesting here. Catholic Jesuit-trained James Ogby was deputy manager of FBI agent Jesse Jackson's 1984 and 1998 presidential campaigns, interestingly. In 1995, James Ogby was appointed co-convener of the National Democratic Ethnic Coordinating Committee. He served as senior advisor on ethnic outreach for both Al Gore's presidential campaign in 2000 and Barack Obama's first presidential campaign in 2008. Since 2001, Zogby has been a member of the executive committee of the Democratic National Committee. This is Jesuit-trained James Zogby, so it makes sense he's with the Democrats. In 2006, he was also named co-chair of the DNC's Resolutions Committee. As member of that committee in 2012, he objected of the insertion of language affirming that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel and helped draft the pro-Palestinian language that appeared in the 2016 party platform. After the Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar recently accused Jews of being disloyal to America and paying members of Congress to support Israel, Jesuit-trained Catholic Zogby leaped to her defense. What a surprise. In a series of interviews, and a recent conference call for the news media together with J Street President Jeremy Ben Ami, Catholic Jesuit-trained James Zogby has insisted that there is nothing anti-Semitic about Omar's statements, and that the whole controversy is the fault of racist Zionists. And this is ultimate dialectic too, because the Jesuits control Zionism. One of the militant founders of Zionism, Zeb Jabotinsky, called fascist Italy his spiritual homeland. Joseph Rettinger, S.J., the founder of the Bilderberg Group, is also one of the covert founders of Zionism. But continuing, because this is from James Zogby, because Omar has dared to challenge the way supporters of Israel have been worked to silence debate on U.S. policy towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, she has become a victim of incitement and hate crimes of the target legislation meant to shame her, according to Catholic Zogby. He says that Mrs. Omar didn't slander Jews. She merely, quote, challenged the power of AIPAC to intimidate politicians and silence debate on Israel-Palestine. This is all, inflaming division between Jews and Muslims, and that's, I think what these Jesuit Muslim-controlled think tanks are doing. As a consequence, the poor Congresswoman has endured, quote, shameful, bigoted assaults on her as a Muslim woman, end quote. According to Catholic Jesuit-trained James Zogby. Zogby has actually gone so far to implicitly praise Iman Omar's statements about Jews, characterizing her remarks as, quote, the discussion Omar's courage has helped to open, end quote. I wonder how much of this is related to Zogby's own history of making anti-Semitic remarks. Perhaps he sees Omar as a kindred spirit. During the 1982 Lebanon War, Zogby compared Israel to the Nazis and described Israeli military actions against terrorists in southern Lebanon as a, quote, Holocaust, according to the Anti-Defamation League. The official U.S. State Department definition of anti-Semitism includes, quote, drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis. In 1991, Henry Sagman, executive director of the American Jewish Congress, wrote that Zogby had, quote, consistently impugned the loyalty of American Jews by suggesting that he put the interest of Israel ahead of the interest of the United States in their lobbying efforts in support of Israel subvert the democratic process. Such accusations are the standard fare of anti-Semitism, end quote. In 1999, Zogby, and this is exactly what, Jesuit agent Noam Chomsky is all about, that, Israel has subverted the United States. Noam Chomsky, friggin' lived with Jesuits in Nicaragua and had got an honorary degree from Jesuit Loyola University in 1970. And why do you think he denies the Cambodian genocide that was enacted by Roman Catholic communist Pol Pot? As Skolnick would say, savvy sorts, can put it together. But in 1999, Zogby publicly charged that there were too many Jewish employees in the State Department. How about, he's not complaining about all the Jesuit-trained Catholic employees in the State Department. He's one of them. We see here the ADL characterizes statements as, quote, crude anti-Semitism. Another Catholic in the U.S. Congress, Cynthia McKinney, devout Catholic, isn't just as anti-Semitic as Catholic Jesuit-trained James Zogby. This article's almost done here, though, from the Jewish News Syndicate. All this in addition to Zogby's long list of other outrageous statements, including accusing then Israeli Prime Minister Shimon Peres, who was a Vatican Knight, of carrying out, quote, state-sponsored terrorism. And Catholic James Zogby, Jesuit-trained, praised Hezbollah terrorists as, quote, the Lebanese armed resistance, and justifying Palestinian terror attacks against Israel as, quote, desperate acts of striking out against the master, end quote. And if you want to see how controlled the Jesuits are by, I'll link. Johnny wrote an article about the Lebanese chairman of Nissan, Carlos Ghosn, who was arrested for quote, underreported compensation to the Japanese government and misuse of funds. But this Carlos Ghosn was trained by Jesuits, who was arrested. And interestingly, the current president of Lebanon, Saad Hariri, has given literally $22 million to the Jesuits. Literally $22 million. Look at this story here. Lebanese and Georgetown University elites filled an overhauling Lorflik Auditorium in 2009 to celebrate a $22 million gift honoring the former Lebanese Prime Minister Rafik Hariri. Hariri. I don't know how you'd pronounce that there. Rafik Hariri. The audience in the school did not know that the fewer than 10 years later, Georgetown alumnus who gifted the amount would be at the center of geopolitical instability and scandal in the Middle East. The gifted Saad Hariri had led the university to officially dedicate the Rafik B. Hariri building, the newly named home of the McDonough School of Business. So $22 million. I'll link this story. So You can see why this Catholic, James Ugby is praising, Palestine, Lebanon. Lebanon is basically, a Catholic country. Just look at all the presidents and alumni that have come from Jesuit St. Joseph's University in Lebanon. But not to mention other lunatic statements by Zugby, as his accusation that, quote, Israel ethnically cleansed the land of Arabs when there are obviously still several million Arabs. Yeah, what a joke. Like, this Jesuit trained Zugby said the Arabs have ethnically cleansed. He's saying that Israel has ethnically cleansed Arabs when literally, like, they're the biggest religion on the world, like, number-wise. Like, they even passed Catholicism recently. Like, I'm pretty sure Islam is now the number one biggest religion in the world number-wise. But they've been ethnically cleansed, but they're the number one in the world population, right? What a joke. Okay, and his Catholic Jesuit-trained James Ogby's recent declaration that celebrity chef Rachel Ray committed, quote, cultural genocide against the Palestinians because she referred to hummus as an Israeli food. This is, Jesuit theater getting Muslims and, Jews divided. If the Democratic Party leadership wants to convince the public that it rejects Congressman Omar's statements, it should start by disowning Jesuit-trained Catholic James Zugby. Well, who do you think the Democratic Party will do that to Jesuit-educated James Zugby when literally their chairman, Tom Perez, has deep Jesuit connections, according to America Magazine, Tom Perez went to Jesuit Canisius College, the current chairman of the DNC. I'll show you this article here quick. This came out in 2017. Look right here. Like, are you kidding me? New Democratic Party leader Tom Perez has deep Jesuit connections. So don't expect, the psyops to stop with James Zugby and the Democratic Party. You see, and Perez says his mentor is Horace B. McKenna, S.J., and he even met his wife, Anne Marie Studenmeyer, at the Jesuit Volunteer Corps in Buffalo. Are you kidding me? Okay, but continuing here. Having an unrepentant anti-Semite publicly defending an anti-Semitic congressman while continuing to hold positions in the party leadership is not going to do the trick. Well, that's all part of the plan. You see, but it's interesting that the Jesuits are behind, these two open, super militant pro-Muslim anti-Israel think tanks. And here's the quote from this book here, Craig Unger, The House of Bush, page 61. You see here at a 1998 rally sponsored by the Council of American Islamic Relations, who was founded by Jesuit trained at Santa Clara, Omar Ahmad. For example, 500 people sang a song with the lyrics, quote, "No to the Jews, descendants of the apes," end quote. On their, in 2019, the Council of American Islamic Relations are calling for, Jews to be exterminated. So. And you see, Mossad is controlled by the Vatican because if Mossad was genuine, they would be releasing information on where the sources of anti-Semitism are coming from. They would tell you that the Catholic Church is behind this agenda of anti-Semitism, but they're not doing that because Mossad was founded by a Knight of Malta, General Reinhard Gehlen. And Reinhard Gehlen admits in his memoirs on page 236 of his book, The Service, that the only reason the United States allowed Fidel Castro to come to power was because he was his devout Jesuit schooling. That's the only reason. But here's the other group here. The Arab American Institute is another very anti-Semitic group led by the super anti-Semite Catholic Jesuit-trained James Ogby. And here's the other side of the dialectic. I'm just going to show you this here quick. There's this group called the Council for National Policy, which is anti-Islam. You see, or the Center for Security Policy. This was the group here. Founder and president of the Center for Security Policy. You see here, this guy is very anti-Islamic. You see here, he says like Jesuit-trained Frank Gaffney is saying like the Muslim Brotherhood has taken over the U.S. government. Very clear Jesuitical gaslighting. But you see the Jesuits control, both sides of every, debate. That's what they do. Actually, look in the presidential. This is an article from Georgetown University, or at Georgetown University. Presidential candidate set to appear at event hosted by anti-Muslim conspiracy theorists. This took place at Georgetown. It looks like. Well, this guy Frank Gaffney went to Georgetown. This, founder of the Center for Security Policy. Yeah, went to the Jesuit School of Foreign Service. Look at that. Involved in the Reagan administration. Yeah, he was Assistant Secretary of Defense. Yeah, right, and that's how Wikipedia labels him. He's an anti-Muslim conspiracy theorist. So I'm saying they're controlling both sides, and these two Muslim think tanks here that I just wanted to mention: the Arab American Institute, founded by Catholic Jesuit-trained James Zogby, anti-Semite, and you got the Council on American Islamic Relations, founded by Jesuit-trained anti-Semite Omar Ahmad. Let me see if anyone's in the chat here. And as Skolnick said, having the Israelis and Muslims just going bickering back and forth is great for the oil companies in the Middle East, because people are distracted with nonsense, nothing of substance. Let me see here. Hey, how's it going? Yeah, oh yeah, every shit, yeah. Whenever you see the Jesuits on TV, they're always good guys, always. Actually, and this was one of the rare times. I'm gonna play this one more time. And the craziest thing about this, actually, someone linked this after Lou Dobbs called out this Jesuit Thomas Rees for being disloyal. His house was shot at. This Jordan Lindo mentioned that, and this was in 2009. Lou Dobbs' house in New Jersey was literally shot a few days after this interview, and CNN fired him 1 month after calling out the Jesuit Thomas Rees.
Who are
as you said, Blue, but they only allow Jesuits to be shown in good light through the media.
American citizens?
You didn't answer a single question I asked, Father, but then again, you're a Jesuit. You can get away with it. Question I
These are
okay,
children who are American citizens.
You didn't answer a single question I asked, Father, but then again, you're a Jesuit. You can get away with it. But I asked, Father, but then again, you're a Jesuit. You can get away with it. Single question I asked, Father, but then again, you're a Jesuit. You can get away with it.
His house was shot up for
this. But then again, you're a Jesuit. You can get away with it.
It's a classic soundbite. Well, absolutely. Nobody in politics from local to DC is anti-Jesuit. Absolutely. If you are anti-Jesuit, you'll be, outed from the bench, or outed from your post as a governor, or outed from wherever, whatever your position is. Here's what E. Howard Hunt said about the Jesuits here. I have this documentary on my channel talking about the 1954 coup in Guatemala. E. Howard Hunt says we had gotten the okay from Cardinal Spellman to go ahead with this. Cardinal Spellman went to Jesuit Fordham, and I wouldn't presume to trace the lines of authority within the Catholic Church. How they get their information they deal with. We've always said in an admiring way that the Jesuits form the greatest intelligence service in the world, and always have. End quote. Right from E. Howard Hunt's 1974 book, he said the most impressive guy he met in Cuba was Jesuit-trained Manuel Artime, who led the, staged invasion against Castro, the invasion that was meant to fail to keep the Jesuit Fidel Castro in power in Cuba. You see here, E. Howard Hunt said, I maintain daily contact with a dozen or so leading Cuban officials who have been selected to form the provisional government. The most impressive of these was the 27-year-old Dr. Manuel Artime, a Jesuit-trained psychiatrist who had joined Castro's forces in Sierra Maestra and served as a regional agricultural officer after Castro's victory. And, actually, I have an article here. Castro actually said that he learned things from the Jesuits that weren't just religious. Would you imagine that? This was from the Irish Times here. Fidel Castro confesses the Jesuit ethics. Castro says here, the Jesuits were nearly always Spanish. Castro described them as austere, strict, self-sacrificing, and hardworking, untouched by the profit motive. What a joke. But look at this here. They were very rigorous, demanding people. He acquired from them, quote, ethics and norms that weren't just religious. Oh, I bet. That's Castro saying that right there. You know, I have the book. And here's that book from that E. Howard Hunt quote I just mentioned. Just to show you that, so I'm not making it up. The Emmanuel Artime. $130. This is in this book here. I think it's page 130. Yeah, right here. You can see this is where Hunt says the most impressive guy he met in Cuba was Jesuit-trained Manuel Artime. Manuel Artime was actually recruited to the CIA by Jesuit priests, and he took asylum with the Jesuits after supposedly, the Castro government issued an arrest for him after the so-called Bay of Pigs. But, the reason he took asylum with the Jesuits is because the Jesuits were controlling the whole thing. That's the quote there. This is the quote from Reinhard Galen's book, Service. No one seems to know about this quote. Reinhard Galen was a Knight of Malta, one of the founders of Mossad, a CIA agent. He writes in this book about, being toured by the CIA, like Alan Dulles, Knight of Malta, Walter Bedell Smith. Look at this right here. So I'll read from the top. One thing is beyond dispute, and this is from page 230. I'm not making it up. 237 of Reinhard Galen's book, The Service. Okay, but 237, Reinhard Galen says, one thing is beyond dispute, however. Had the United States made the decision to act, the world would have been spared the real Cuba crisis of 18 months later. And it was the lay Jesuit Dominican priest, Father Felix Morley, and the Pro Dio that was sent in to negotiate during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Completely controlled. But continuing, the truth is that there were certain overriding reasons why the United States deemed it appropriate not to react, as the Russians would certainly have reacted under similar circumstances. Moreover, it is not improbable that Washington underestimated the significance of this island nation, and that it played a contributory part to the belief that Cuba might be right on its quote doorstep. It was too diminutive a nation ever to cause real trouble. And this is the interesting quote here. As we read the incoming cables at Pullock at the time, I remember telling my colleagues that it was incomprehensible to me why the United States fumbled this unique chance of intervening militarily to eliminate Castro. My opinion was founded on our in-depth analysis of the future role Cuba might be expected to play on the international scene. Oddly enough, I suspect that the Americans were themselves largely to blame for Castro's overthrow of dictator Batista, a leader who was certainly not as black as the international press depicted him at the time. It is clear that the Americans did nothing to aid Batista, while in Castro, who is known to have had a devout Jesuit schooling, they believed they would see a leader who would emerge who would restore democracy. I repeat, it is clear that the Americans did nothing to aid Batista, while in Castro, who is known to have had a devout Jesuit schooling, they believed they would see a leader emerge who would restore democracy. And these are the quotes that, the prostituted history professors, will hide from you. But, yeah, definitely. The Fourth Reich. Yeah, Donald Trump, that's what, Sherman Skolnick, makes this point brilliantly too. And actually, Sherman Skolnick mentions, he compares the creation of Homeland Security to the creation of the Reichstag, the creation of the SS in Germany. The SS was even, I did a video on this. It's page 36 of G. Gordon Liddy's book, Will. G. Gordon Liddy, Jesuit-trained FBI agent, admits that Heinrich Himmler modeled his SS off of the Jesuit order. But the Nazi SS was created 1 year after the Reichstag fire, right? Just like Homeland Security was created 1 year after 9/11. And, Sherman Skolnick covered here, this Tom Ridge, the American Gestapo chief of Homeland Security, was devout Catholic Knight of Columbus, the leader of the White House transition team to create Homeland Security. John C. Gannon, Jesuit trained, he actually was even a Jesuit volunteer corps member, CIA agent, CFR member, So there's definitely some, the Gestapo is definitely rising in America. Homeland Security just bought like 1.6 billion rounds of hollow point bullets. 1.6 billion rounds. And the thing was, Skolnick mentions how there's no charter in the Constitution for the creation of the FBI. And Skolnick mentions it was one of his articles. He said no one dares to mention that these days. The FBI was founded by a devout Catholic, Charles Joseph Bonaparte, a descendant of Napoleon. Let me see if there's any excerpts from Homeland Security. I know Skolnick mentions Homeland Security a bit here. Okay, see, Skolnick says Homeland Security has nameless, faceless operatives interfering with freedom of speech and the press, but also the right of the people to peacefully assemble. And notice the monopoly press does not dare use the term, as we do, of secret political police to identify the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, and the NRO, which controls who and if anyone is allowed to use satellites in space. That's an interesting point there. There's lots of, I linked this book in the description with Skolnick, because he mentions James Zogby a little bit in here. There's lots of information on Homeland Security. Homeland Security, is like the SS that was created in the United States. And I'll show you, they bought 1.6 billion rounds of ammo. And, it's effective for the Jesuits to have their stooges like, James Zogby and Omar Ahmad, just getting Jews and Muslims riled up with each other through their, think tanks while no one, is talking about this in the background. Yeah, look, this was Fox News even covered it. Why Department of Homeland Security buying so many rounds? This is official. 1.6 billion rounds. Think about how many. These are hollow point bullets. 1.6 billion. Homeland Security has also given $34 billion in federal grant money to local police departments so they can get mine resistance, ambush protective vehicles, Bradleys, M4s, AR-15s, bayonets, Kevlar helmets, camo gear, flashbangs, grenade launchers. Homeland Security is giving it all to the cops. Yeah, I think that's all for this one, YouTube. These are just reading it on I went on a little tangent there, but this James Zogby and Omar Ahmad. Zogby, the founder and president of the Arab American Institute, Jesuit trained at Lemoyne College, devout Catholic, and a super anti-Semite. And you got Omar Ahmad, Jesuit trained at Santa Clara University, the founder of the Council of American Islamic Relations, another, super anti-Semite. And you had Jesuit trained Frank Gannon, the founder of the Center for Security Policy, is, anti-Muslim. So you can see it's all, dialectical. It's, it's all, just, trapping people in emotions and, confusion, which all these, groups do. Yeah, that's all for this one, YouTube. Peace and love, and namaste. I'll catch you on the next one.